3. The invisible architecture of client behavior. Why what you see is rarely the whole system at work. By the time client behavior becomes noticeable, the forces shaping it have usually been in place for some time. What appears on the surface, hesitation, urgency, contradiction, silence, or sudden decisiveness, is rarely the origin of the problem. It is the visible outcome of an invisible structure. Every client operates within an architecture of constraints, expectations, and pressures that cannot be seen from the outside. This architecture shapes how decisions are made, how risk is assessed, and how much freedom exists to speak plainly. When this structure is misunderstood, behavior is often misinterpreted. When it is recognized, behavior becomes predictable. Understanding this invisible architecture is essential for managing global client dynamics with precision rather than frustration. Behavior is the output, not the system. Professionals often try to address client behavior directly. They push for clarity, request commitment, challenge inconsistency, or attempt to accelerate decisions. These responses make sense if behavior is assumed to be the problem. In reality, behavior is the output of a system operating under pressure. A client who delays is often managing competing authorities. A client who changes direction may be responding to newly surfaced constraints rather than indecision. A client who escalates urgency may be compensating for a lack of control elsewhere in the system. Treating these behaviors as standalone issues rarely produces lasting improvement because the forces generating them remain intact. The key shift is to stop asking what the client is doing and start asking what the system requires them to do in order to remain safe, credible, and compliant within their environment. Organizational structure shapes communication. One of the most influential elements of the invisible architecture is organizational structure. Many clients operate within layered hierarchies where authority and accountability do not sit in the same place. Decisions may require approval from multiple stakeholders who are absent from the conversation. Responsibility may be delegated without full decision-making power. In these environments, communication becomes cautious by necessity. Commitments are framed tentatively. Questions are deferred. Agreement is expressed conditionally. From the outside, this can look like avoidance or lack of ownership. From within the system, it is risk management. When professionals misread these signals, they often push harder for certainty, inadvertently increasing pressure and reinforcing the very behavior they are trying to resolve. Professional identity limits what can be said. Clients are not only managing tasks and outcomes, they are managing identity. How they speak, what they admit, and when they ask for clarification all affect how competent, reliable, or senior they appear. In high-stakes environments, this self-presentation becomes critical. Admitting uncertainty may feel unsafe. Challenging a proposal may risk appearing uncooperative. Requesting additional time may suggest lack of preparation. Behavior adapts accordingly. Silence replaces questions. Polite agreement replaces honest hesitation. Revisions appear later, once internal cover has been secured. These behaviors protect identity, even when they complicate collaboration. Cultural expectations reinforce the structure. Culture strengthens the invisible architecture by defining what is acceptable to say and when. In some systems, authority is respected through deference and restraint. In others, credibility is demonstrated through assertiveness and speed. These expectations influence not only what clients say, but how they interpret what others say to them. A direct request may feel intrusive. A gentle suggestion may feel optional. A pause may be respectful rather than evasive. These interpretations are not individual quirks, they are culturally reinforced defaults. When pressure increases, people rely more heavily on these defaults. Behavior becomes more predictable within its own cultural logic, even as it becomes more confusing to outsiders. The role of unspoken constraints. Many of the most influential forces shaping client behavior are political considerations, internal disagreements, budget limitations, reputational risk, regulatory pressure. These factors often cannot be disclosed openly. Yet they shape every response. Clients rarely say, "I cannot answer this because it would expose internal disagreement," or "I need to delay because approval is uncertain." Instead, behavior communicates what words cannot. Messages become non-committal. Timelines shift. Scope changes incrementally. Urgency fluctuates as constraints move. Without awareness of these hidden constraints, professionals are left reacting to symptoms rather than causes. Why behavior feels inconsistent from the outside. From the outside, client behavior shaped by invisible architecture often feels inconsistent. Agreement is followed by hesitation. Confidence gives way to caution. Direction shifts without explanation. This inconsistency is frustrating because it appears illogical. Within the system, however, behavior is often highly consistent. It responds to changes in internal permission, pressure, or risk exposure. What changes is not intent, but context. Recognizing this reduces emotional friction and restores strategic clarity. Instead of reacting to apparent inconsistency, you can anticipate where behavior is likely to bend next. Seeing the system changes the conversation. When the invisible architecture becomes visible, conversations change. Questions shift from "why are they doing this" to "what does the system require here?" Tone becomes less reactive. Requests become more precise. Expectations adjust to reality rather than assumption. This does not mean lowering standards or accepting misalignment. It means addressing the right level of the problem. Professionals who learn to read invisible architecture intervene earlier and more effectively. They create conditions where clarity is safer to express. They slow conversations strategically to allow alignment to surface. They name constraints indirectly, giving clients permission to respond more honestly. From frustration to foresight. Managing global client dynamics requires more than communication skill. It requires systems awareness. When behavior is understood as the product of an invisible architecture, frustration gives way to foresight. Patterns replace surprises. Control replaces reactivity. This chapter provides the lens needed to see beneath surface behavior. The chapters that follow build on this lens, showing how to recognize early warning signs, stabilize meaning before drift occurs, and apply communication controls that work with the system rather than against it. Once the architecture is visible, the work becomes far less personal and far more manageable.